Yeah, good evening, everybody. It's KB5 MIQ Big Boy. Hope everybody's having a great field day weekend. I hate it. kind of messed up W5DLX, WD5HKV, and our plans for field day this year. I had some family issues come up and I couldn't make it. Hopefully, we're going to try to do winter field day. And I tell you what, I thought it was too cold last winter, but it's awful hot in Texas right now to be out. But we are going to shoot for winter field day and try to do this field day next year for sure. Just a few little certain observations I've been seeing here lately. Number one, we're getting people check in about every night from around the country on our 10-meter round table, and we really appreciate it. We really enjoy it. Glad to hear some people checking in with us. The bands are 10-meter bands opening up. And I have a habit of checking QRZ, everybody's call sign, and we are getting a lot of texts checking in. And that's great. Would love to see these texts getting on the air. Because, like I've said before, some earlier videos, when I first got licensed, HKV got licensed, we had to start out as novice. And we didn't have access to VHF, UHF. And that was our only, and mine in particular, because Jeff's good at CW and I'm not. And that was my only avenue to get on the radio was a 28.3 to 28.5 novice portion of 10 meters. Had a lot of fun there doing that too. That's when I really learned to love 10 meters. Like I said, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, we try to be on there, and we try to be on about 28.450. But if there's somebody needs to run a net there or something, we go up. Sometimes a 460, but we're there 4 nights a week. And if you hear us, please check in. Um, Gonna talk a couple of things I've seen pop up on social media uh, about antennas and equipment needed and things like that. One thing I had a guy talk about lightning protection. Do I need, if I disconnect my radio, do I need to install lightning protection? And that opened up a huge can of worms and answers. Now, I'm going to tell you how I do it, how HKV does it, and I'm pretty sure DLX follows this same rule. Uh, Not telling you that's the way you should do it. I'm just going to tell you how I do it, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why I made my decision, but based on this bit of information. In the mid '90s, HKV and myself attended a vocational school to be an industrial electrician. And the school we went to was mainly centered around residential, commercial, electrician, electrical wiring, with a lot of emphasis on motor hookups. But the guys teaching it were residential, commercial electricians on the outside. And actually, HKV and myself ended up working for them for about a year. And then I wired houses for another one for several years after that on a part time basis, part time electrician. Anyway, getting back to my decisions about lightning protection. When in the middle of that class, we got to talking in the National Electric Code, and the main guy stopped the class. He said, "Okay, I'm going to tell all y'all something. I'm going to give you one piece of advice doing residential, commercial, electric work. There's about three things you do not want to get involved with installing in somebody's house. Number one, burglar alarms. Number two, fire alarms. And number three, mainly and more and most ever, lightning protection." He said, "I don't care what any manufacturer tells you about lightning protection. Don't trust lightning protection and put your name on installing it that it won't have damage to a vehicle, to a house." And that's kind of the way I've always done my ham radio. I just disconnect my antennas. I have my antennas connected to a pass through, that the pass through is grounded to a ground rod outside with copper braid. And I just got a separate port for every antenna. When I'm on the air, if I want to switch from 10 to 17, I'll just get up and change the antenna connection. I've got a couple of antenna switches, but I had trouble with them, and I just took them completely out of the loop. And when I shut down at night, last thing I do after I turn my radio off, turn power supply off, I disconnect my antennas from my radio, and that's what I've always done. Not saying don't buy lightning protection if you want to. If you feel better about buying lightning protection, by all means do it. Anything I tell you, I'm just telling you how I do something. I'm not advocating that you do it the way I say. I'm just telling you my views and how I handle that. I would rather spend that money on something else myself. All right. Well, I don't have a real expensive array either. You know, like I've told y'all before, everything I do is homemade, on a budget, things like that. Now, I had another guy ask a question. He was wanting to buy a 1.5 kilowatt amp. And the guy asked him, he said, well, okay, have you got a license? He said, yeah, I've got a license. He said, what kind of antenna array you got? Oh, I ain't got a very good one, so I think I need an amp. Not knocking amps. Don't get me wrong. I am not knocking amps. Uh, they great. Folks wants to use one of them. Absolutely great. Hey, Ham Radio Cat, come on up. Come on. Ham Radio Cat. Aaron, number one fan. The cat's fussing over here at me. Amps are great. I don't own one. I've always said whatever an amp costs, I would rather spend that on improving my antenna system. I say that I've worked almost all 50 states. I only like 5 states having all states work. I've worked over 50 countries that I've got confirmed. And I do this part time. I'm not on the radio every day. And I would rather enhance my antenna system over an amp any day of the week. Not telling you not to buy one. But before I spent money on an amp, I would take that money and improve my antenna system through antenna height, better feed line, or better antenna. Antenna height is the best thing you can spend money on, in my opinion. Now, in the military, I run a Harris Pacer Bounce HF rig for several years in the last squadron I was in before I retired. We had a good setup. I had a 7 through 30 megahertz log periodic with a foam core Helax feed line, and that antenna was on like a 80-foot fold over tower. I had a really good setup. But the stations I went to talk to never had the same setup. And I got tired of trying to explain to people above me that come in there and I'm trying to make contact with these other stations and they couldn't hear me or I couldn't hear them. They turn the amp on. Well, then try to explain to them, but a 500 watt amp, when you're putting 100 watts into it, it's not going to raise the signal that much, in my opinion. And it didn't help at all. Because if you don't have somebody on both ends that's knows what they're doing and got a good antenna up, you're going to have problems. And that was something that happened in the military. Ham radio operators, by and large, especially HF operators, has got a good system up. They know how to operate their antennas and things like that. But before you buy an amp, spend that money on an antenna system. That's my opinion. Take it or leave it. I'd hate to see somebody get discouraged by setting a kilowatt amp up here and they're still not making any better contacts. Plus, you've got RF issues you've got to deal with now in your shack. A lot of high voltages there that you're going to be dealing with. Everything has to be hooked up right. And I've never used an amp. HKV's been a ham since the 70s. He's never used an amp. And they're going to tell he's probably worked, I know he's worked all 50 states and probably 100 countries since he's been a ham. But we like building our own antennas and doing things, there's a limited budget. So it's just something to think about. Before you want to buy an amp, I would improve my antenna system as best as I possibly could on anything else. Well, that's about all I come up with on Saturday. My next antenna, I'm going to show you all how to build a 3-element 2-meter Yagi out of an old TV antenna. HKV come up with an old TV antenna. He's already built his out of it. He had enough spares left over out of it to give me and Cody enough to build our own. And I'm going to do a video on that. That is one of the best 2-meter 3-element beams you can use, and it saves you a lot of money because if you get the antenna for free, you're not going to have any money invested in this antenna. And I guarantee it'll work just as good as any 3-element you buy off the counter. Plus you get the fun of building an antenna. And that's just a good cheap way to keep your budget down, spend money on something else. And on that subject, since the internet and satellite TV's come about, the old analog big TV antennas are getting hard to find. So if you want to do some antenna building and you can find one on somebody's house or an older house, and I wouldn't advocate going in anybody's yard unless you have permission. But a lot of times they'll give you them to take them down. So if you get one, get it. Especially, hey, Ham Radio Cat. Aaron, number one fan. Here's old Ham Radio Cat finally jumped up here and in the way. Especially any of those old Radio Shack TV antennas. They were huge, had a lot of elements on them, and they had a square boom, which makes it a lot easier to attach the elements to keep them in the same plane going across there. So we're going to build a 3-element, 2-meter FM Yagi. There'll be a little different feed point on it than a lot of them have that you see out, especially in commercial antennas. Jeff come up with this off of an old antenna building book he had years ago when he's managed to remember it and keep the information wrote down. So that's what we're going to do later this week, and I'm going to do a whole video just on that. We've hit, like I said, 331 on the subscribers. I appreciate everybody who's subscribed to the channel, getting a lot of great comments, a lot of good emails. Remember, Main Trading Company in Paris, Texas, I think, or mtcradio.com, I believe, is their website. Good ham radio outlet to buy ham radio equipment. A lot of Facebook pages, a lot of good club pages out there, and a lot of clubs holding field day today. So if you're a member of a club, you get out there and have some fun. Dallas Amateur Radio Club, Cowtown Amateur Radio Club, Four States Amateur Radio Club, Shreveport Amateur Radio Club, all got Facebook pages. Lots of good information on it. Ham Radio Flea Market Trading Post, Ham Radio, Amateur Radio Elmer's, Texas Amateur Radio. A lot of good Facebook pages out there to get information from. All right, everybody. I appreciate everybody who likes to listen to me. We're going to keep trying to do these to support the hobby as much as we can. This is KB5 MIQ Big Boy 73.